Royal scandals have long shown that a crown doesn't shield against love, loss, or betrayal. European monarchs claimed divine right, yet their human flaws often broke the monarchy's mystique, fueling gossip and controversy. Here are 10 scandals that shook royal credibility and captivated their subjects across history. Number 10. King Edward II and Piers Gaveston. Starting off the list, Edward II of England had a complicated love life that became a full-blown political issue. In 1308, he married Isabella of France to ease tensions with the French crown, but the real spotlight seemed to shine on his relationship with his close courtier, Piers Gaveston. Some historians think it was more than friendship, though no one can say for certain. Even if it was purely platonic, Edward prioritized Gaveston above practically everyone else, which stirred up quite a bit of friction in his court. Edward's father, King Edward I, saw the closeness as a problem and banished Gaveston to France in 1307. But once Edward II became king, he immediately recalled Gaveston, showering him with gifts and even naming him Earl of Cornwall. Their bond kept causing trouble though. In 1308, Gaveston was exiled again, this time because Isabella's father, King Philip IV, was furious with Edward's favoritism. Still, by 1309, Gaveston was back in England, and the drama never really ended. Eventually, Edward II's obsession with his favourites, including Gaveston and later Hugh Despenser, alienated the nobles and barons, contributing heavily to his downfall and eventual death in 1327. It shows how even monarchs can let personal attachments ripple into political disaster. Number 9. King Eadwig's Ménage à Trois. Moving further back in history, King Eadwig of England, who ruled from 955 to 957, is infamous for his short but scandalous reign. He started ruling at just 14, and instead of focusing on governance, he got tangled up in personal indulgences, particularly with women. The most legendary episode was his supposed ménage à trois, where he allegedly excused himself from his own coronation to spend time intimately with 2 women simultaneously. Some accounts suggest these women were his future wife Elfgefu and her mother Ethelgefu. While the exact details remain murky and contradictory, the story stuck, painting Eadwig as irresponsible and self-indulgent. His actions strained relationships with his family, political advisors, and church leaders, weakening his authority in the process. Historians note that whether the event happened precisely as told matters less than its impact on his legacy. Eadwig's reign became defined by personal scandal, setting a precedent that royal misbehavior could easily overshadow governance. Number 8. Queen Elizabeth's Annus Horribilis, 1992. Fast forwarding to the 20th century, Queen Elizabeth II herself had her share of rough patches, famously calling 1992 her Annus Horribilis. That year, a series of misfortunes shook the monarchy. Prince Andrew, Princess Anne, and Prince Charles all announced divorces. Windsor Castle caught fire and media scrutiny intensified, especially around the ongoing troubles between Prince Charles and Princess Diana. The situation escalated when Andrew Morton's book Diana, Her True Story, revealed Camilla Parker Bowles as Charles's lover and divulged details about Diana's mental health struggles. The book shattered the public image of a flawless monarchy and made it clear that the royal family was very much human and prone to messiness. Later, private phone calls between Diana and her lover James Gilbey and between Charles and Camilla were leaked. The media dubbed these scandals Squidgygate and Tampongate, which became major talking points and significantly affected public trust in the monarchy, particularly Charles's perceived readiness to rule. Number 7. Jean Carlos I of Spain shoots his 14-year-old brother dead, 1956. In a shocking and tragic case, Jean Carlos I of Spain accidentally shot his younger brother Infante Alfonso in 1956. Alfonso was just 14, and the incident occurred when Jean Carlos, then 18, discharged a revolver that killed his sibling. Accounts differ on the specifics, but the death was officially ruled accidental and no autopsy was performed. The tragedy marked the start of a lifetime of controversy for Jean Carlos, who later abdicated in 2014 and left Spain in 2020 amid financial scandals. This story reminds us that royal life wasn't just about fancy ceremonies and political maneuvering. It could be unexpectedly tragic and deeply personal, with lasting effects on the individuals involved and their public reputations. Number 6. Edward VIII's abdication, 1936. Edward VIII is another monarch whose personal choices made history. He voluntarily abdicated the British throne in 1936 to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Simpson had already been divorced twice and was technically still married to her second husband when she and Edward began their affair. This was a huge problem because as king, Edward was also the head of the Church of England, which condemned remarriage after divorce. Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin even threatened to have his cabinet resign if Edward went ahead with the marriage. The public and Parliament debated the situation endlessly. Edward chose love over the crown, stepping down on December the 10th and explaining in a radio broadcast that he could not fulfill his kingly duties without Wallis's support. But there's more to the story. Some historians suggest his marriage scandal might have been a convenient front for his Nazi sympathies. During his honeymoon in 1937, Edward met with key figures in Nazi Germany, including Hitler, Goebbels, and Goering. Churchill later stationed Edward in the Bahamas during World War II, partly out of concern for his loyalties. Edward's story is a reminder that personal choices, political expectations, and international intrigue often collided for royals. Number 5. The Kotzer Scandal, 1891. Scandals involving royals often blur the line between public and private life, and the Kotzer Scandal is a perfect example. In 1891, Kaiser Wilhelm II's sister, Princess Charlotte, invited aristocrats to Yachtschloss Grunewald, where orgies took place, and details were later exposed through anonymous letters, complete with drawings of the acts. Among those implicated was the Kaiser's master of ceremony, Leberecht von Kotzer. Kotzer faced imprisonment and after his release attempted to challenge those who betrayed him to duels, ultimately dying in one. While historians speculate Princess Charlotte might have leaked the information, the real author remains unknown. The scandal demonstrates how even royal circles could be deeply secretive and simultaneously brutally exposed, showing the public that behind the royal veneer there was a human desire and scandal waiting to erupt. Number 4. The Mailing Incident, 1889. Another tragic story unfolds with Crown Prince Rudolf of Austria-Hungary. In 1889, he was found dead in his hunting lodge at Mailing alongside his teenage lover, Baroness Maria Wetzera. The investigation suggested a murder-suicide. Rudolf shot Maria before taking his own life. The incident sent shockwaves through the empire, and Emperor Franz Joseph I suppressed related documents to control the narrative. Even Rudolf's wife, Crown Prince Stephanie, shared his alleged last letter to her, in which he expressed calm resignation toward his death. The Mailing tragedy reflects the intense pressures and personal turmoil that could exist behind a royal life, which often had consequences beyond the private sphere and shook public perception of monarchy. Number 3. The Diamond Necklace Affair, 1784 to 1785. Going further back, Marie Antoinette of France was caught up in one of the most infamous scandals, the Diamond Necklace Affair. A necklace worth 2,000,000 livres, originally designed for Louis XV's mistress, became the centre of a deceptive plot led by Jeanne de Voiles Saint-Remy, the self-styled Comtesse de Lamont. She manipulated Cardinal de Rohan into buying the necklace, claiming to help him reconnect with Marie Antoinette, and used forgeries and impersonation to complete the scheme. When the jewels were sold in London, the Queen was wrongly accused. Despite prosecuting Lamont and her accomplices, the conspirator escaped, spreading the idea that the Queen was at fault. The scandal tarnished Marie Antoinette's reputation and contributed to the public anger that ultimately led to her execution in 1793. It's an example of how clever manipulation could ruin a royal's standing, even when they were innocent. Number 2. Count Philip Christoph von Koenigsmarck disappears after royal affair 1694. Princess Sophia Dorothea of Celle was married to her cousin King George I of England in 1682, but their marriage was unhappy. Sophia had an affair with Swedish Count Philip Christoph von Koenigsmarck and planned to run away with him. However, on the day they intended to escape, the Count vanished without a trace. George I divorced Sophia, and she spent the rest of her life in prison, while the Count's body was never found. Rumors suggest the king had him executed. This story shows how royal affairs could have fatal consequences and how power and jealousy could dictate the fate of those who strayed from expected roles. Number 1. The suspicious death of Amy Robsart, 1560. Finally, the story that set a high bar for royal intrigue. Amy Robsart's death in 1560. Queen Elizabeth I never married but had a favourite at court, Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. Dudley was married, and their rumoured affair drew attention, especially when Amy was found dead with a broken neck. The coroner ruled it an accident, but Dudley's absence at her funeral and comments reported by the Spanish ambassador fueled speculation that he orchestrated her death to free himself to marry Elizabeth. If so, it didn't work. Historians argue the scandal may have prevented the Queen from ever marrying Dudley, leaving both their personal ambitions in limbo. The case remains a reminder that royal life was always under scrutiny, when personal tragedies became public fodder and gossip shaped history. Across the centuries, these scandals show a recurring theme. Even the highest-ranking royals were vulnerable to love, betrayal, and personal mistakes. Their lives might have seemed glamorous and protected by titles, but human desires, errors, and intrigue constantly threatened to undermine their authority. Each story, whether tragic, humorous, or shocking, reminds us that royalty is not immune to scandal, and that sometimes history remembers them more for their mistakes than their crowns. That's it for today. Let me know what you think in the comments below.